our last meeting of the year. We have switched all of our programs completely virtual or canceled for 1 year, and today is the last day. We don't know about for programs whether it will be in person or virtual yet, because we have to see the community transmission rate and the variants, and so we used to have the luncheon on the closing program day, but it is so unfortunate that we can't have any social events during this pandemic. But the one good thing about the online events is you can invite guests as many as you can. So today we have some of the Gateway Arts East MTA members. Thank you. Uh, and our guest speaker, Dr. Welch, is a member of Gateway Arts East MTA. So I think it is wonderful to share our events with our neighbors. Also, we have a PTRT member today. Since we share the programs with PTRT, I think it is a great tradition that we share the programs together and also have a very supportive relationship and collaboration. Thank you, PTRT, and thank you, Gaimta. And thanks to our program chair, Helen. She jumped in a few months ago and tried her best to figure things out, especially dealing with the technology. That is not easy. And thanks so much, Helen. Now, so let me introduce today's speaker, Dr. Welch. He's an active performer and a teacher in our area. He teaches at Blackburn College. So I'm so happy to have him today. I'm personally very interested in this topic. So looking forward to it. Now it is all yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Q. I'm going to go ahead and put up the PowerPoint. And I hope you can all see that. If you can't, let me know. And now that I'm in this view, I'm going to change a couple things. So I'm opening the chat on my screen. So if anything comes up as we're going through, feel free to send me any questions. I'll try to keep an eye on that. I have a couple places for some interactions where I'll ask questions, not too many, but if you want to just unmute and answer, or just unmute at any time and ask any questions you have, happy to be interrupted. The one thing I'm so thankful for the opportunity to meet with people through Zoom, but I feel like it's so much more natural to interact in person and to stop for questions. So if I'm not seeing you, you can really like throw a shoe at me or whatever you need to do to get my attention. So thank you so much for the invitation to be here. I'm so happy to have this opportunity to talk to you about this today. I want to start by framing our discussion about the business of being a pianist. And I have a former teacher who was discussing recruitment of piano majors, and she asked me, is it morally right to recruit students to major in a field where job prospects are dwindling, potentially for the long term? So her theory is that, we're in kind of the ongoing demise of classical music, and there are fewer job opportunities, and is it right to even convince young people that they should invest in degrees and a career in music? And my answer was yes, but only if we prepare them with sufficient skills for a successful career. I think it is on us as teachers to make sure that we are preparing students for all of the aspects of a career as a musician, not just the pianistic ones. My experience as a student and the experience of many of colleagues that I've spoken to is an academic focus on all of the pianistic skills and a very light and often optional set of experiences for finance, marketing, these other things that are important to creating a career and establishing yourself as an artist. So that's kind of where I start from. And a lot of how I see the topic is framed from my position at at a higher education academic institution. But I think all of the principles are applicable to all of us, and I hope you will find that they are. So, the business of being a pianist, what is it? Um, I have the business of being a pianist is the art of finding the intersection of yourself, your skills, and your ability to sell a service. I say that this is an art because it's a dynamic thing. It's something that we need to always be checking in with because it will change as we grow as people and artists, and it will change as the field continues to grow and evolve. This is a visual representation of what as I was discussing with Karen earlier, this is the newest way that I have organized this in my brain. And this is how I am understanding what the business of being a pianist or a musician of any kind is. Most often we think of being a pianist in terms of the pianistic skills. And this is largely what we teach in academia. So that's here. And when I say that I'm doing a workshop about the business of being a pianist, most people expect this part where you're selling. I used selling because of the alliteration, but where you are making some kind of money. Because, money is important. We get into this field because we love it. We stay in the field because we're going to create a life and support ourselves through it. I've included self, especially because I deal with younger students, younger pianists, younger professional pianists entering their studies as undergrad students. And they're at a point in their lives where they especially need to do some self-analysis and self-reflection. And I think we all know that we begin to really have some formative ideas about who we are around that age. So a little bit of where I'm coming to the topic from. My doctoral project, I did my doctorate at the University of Minnesota. I studied with Tim Lovelace. And my topic was curriculum for collaborative piano in a higher education. And I was awarded a grant through the institution that funded travel for me to interview 5 of kind of the top pedagogues in collaborative piano. And I was able to travel to Austin, Texas, where Ann Epperson was at the time. Ann Epperson has started, I think, 4 or 5 collaborative programs, most recently at Indiana University. I went to Eastman and talked to Jean Barr. Margot Garrett, who at the time was at the Juilliard School. I believe she retired or is in the process of retiring. She lived in Minnesota, so I didn't have to travel to see her. I talked to John Wisman, of course, who's retired from U of I, and I went to the University of Michigan and talked to Martin Katz. So a lot of the formative ideas of what I am going to tell you start from their perspectives, and is kind of married with my personal experience. I think that there's been a lot of bad advice, and I've received some of it, and it's not intentionally bad, but unintentionally bad. When I graduated, my teacher was on sabbatical, and I asked his replacement, okay, I'm finishing my doctorate. Like, I really have no idea what happens next. What's my next step? What do I do? And her response was, if you really want to work in this field, you'll figure out a way. Which I get, and I in retrospect can appreciate what she was trying to tell me. However, that didn't give me any practical next steps. It didn't give me an idea of what it is I would be doing. And I think we can provide better advice. And specifically, Blackburn College is an undergraduate institution, so my focus is on undergraduates. I think we should use those 4 years to study ourselves and the unique people that we are, and then what our marketable skills are, and then how to connect to a market and audience. One other note, just for context, I don't have recent numbers, but at the 2012 MTNA conference, they presented a study, a survey from 1992 to 2012. And the number of undergraduates majoring in piano went up by about 25%. They had a survey of pianists studying their master's degrees. It was around 1,000 people getting their master's in piano. And then the number of students getting their doctorate in piano had doubled in just a decade. So there are more people in the field, and the field is changing in a way that there are fewer opportunities. Martin Katz talked about when he was younger that there were recital circuits, and those are greatly diminished now. Staff pianist positions, which have their own kind of qualifiers, we can talk about them another time. Those are often being reduced to half-time or part-time so that there aren't benefits, and so you have to provide health insurance for yourself in some way. There's just fewer traditional jobs and more people in the field. Gene Barr said it's a buyer's, not a seller's market, and I think that's going to be around a while, I'm afraid. I think she is right. So what Gene Barr said is this. Those of you with entrepreneurial skills will cobble together. I think this may end up being the wave of the future. I think you'll do a little of this and a little of that and cobble together a profession. We've heard a lot about the gig economy in recent history, especially in the last year, as so many people are just trying to piece together livelihoods. That has been a national standard that nobody necessarily saw coming. I certainly didn't. But this is something we're going through as a society, not just in music. But I do think, and I'm not an economist, I always like to declare the things that I don't know. I'm not an economist. I hope that some traditional jobs return, but I think music is going to stick around this gig type economy. So, returning to our Venn diagram. In self, there are three specific areas I think we need to look at: our values, our goals, and our traits. I spend more time on this with students. I'm going to spend less time on it with us because I think probably most of us are at a point in our lives where we know who we are and what's important to us. But I want you to have the information just in case. So you need to know your values. And I think of these as pretty broad ideas, like living arrangements. Do you want to live in a big city? Do you want to live near family? Do you want to be on a coast? Do you want prestige? Do you want to really change lives? Each of these are very different things. And if it's a priority to you, it needs to be part of the picture of how you perceive your career. Things that you're passionate about. Are you passionate about playing? Are you more passionate about teaching? Are you passionate about parasailing or cooking or telling stories? All of those things relate to this picture of who you are and inform decisions that you'll be making that impact your career. Goals. You can have personal goals. The first one I wrote is that you'd like to retire by 35. I'll be honest, if you want to retire by 35, I really don't see piano as a logical way to do that. But it's something to consider. Other personal goals, maybe you want to specifically make all of your income through music activities. Maybe you're okay being bivocational, but what is it that you want? Maybe you want to have a good work-life balance. Maybe you want to have your summers off. All of these things matter in determining the correct path for you. And then professional goals. And I think something that's important, especially for young people, to consider is getting at the root of what it is they really want. Uh, we have several theater students at Blackburn, and that's on the other half of the house of music and theater. They're often interested in music, but definitely theater focused. They, I asked them what they want to do with their lives, and it's generally like, oh, I want to sing on Broadway. If you ask a pianist, like, I want to play Carnegie, like, cool, that's great, but what is it that you really want? I'm not saying that you shouldn't have those specific goals, but really identify, is it the experience? Is it the location? Is it the people? Is it what is your professional goal? Um, and then finally, your traits. And students often perceive this as an internal process of knowing who you are. I really think it's most beneficial to pair that with external tools and strategies of figuring out who you are. So personality traits, recently, as in like the last couple of years, there was an article in, I believe, the MTNA journal about the Myers-Briggs personality tests and how that helps you understand yourself and understand students. There's Enneagram tests you can take, Harry Potter, what house you belong in. There's all kinds of different ways that you can perceive who you are, or not necessarily perceive, but get insight into how you function as a person. Because those things are not always natural for us to understand about ourselves. And another important one is feedback from your clients. I think it's important to intentionally ask, like, what is it about me that brings you to lessons or to hire me, whatever your relationship is. What are my characteristics? What are my traits? What is it that is integral of like who I am? And then gifts from your upbringing. I threw this one in because it's often overlooked, and maybe this is too specific, but just musical skills that don't necessarily seem highly valued. So maybe you grew up playing for church and have done extensive accompanying over your life, even if it is like hymn improvisations. Maybe you do more improvisation, or you're learning improv skills from Carol Beth True. That's part of who you are. Playing by ear, if you grew up in a family that didn't read music but like had jam sessions. I think of Vera Parkin with this, and how that has been a tool that she's used in her career. All of these things, whatever is unique to you, is an important part of who you are. I'll pause for questions before we go on. Are we doing okay? This might feel like I'm going fast. I'm fearful that I'm going to run long, so I'm going to power through. Okay, hearing no questions, let's go on to skills. So this is what we traditionally teach in an undergraduate education. It's traditionally what we teach in piano lessons. This is what you're going to think of when you think of someone who is a pianist. I've put these in 3 categories: pianistic skills, collaborative skills, and professional skills. Martin Katz talks a lot about the patchwork quilt of skills that pianists need. And if you're interested in hearing more about that, he wrote a book called The Complete Collaborator. Highly recommend it. He talks about some really practical things that I don't think have been articulated in a book so well. This patchwork quilt is a patchwork quilt of skills and that make up who we are, but simultaneously it's a patchwork quilt of various income streams built off of those different skills. And I hope we'll see how in a minute. Um, Jean Barr is hilarious. I love her to death. Um, when we were talking about the different skills pianists need, she said, "Well, yeah, you need to play the piano, but what else can you do? Can you play the organ? Can you like run an office? Can you empty the trash cans at night? Like we have to be prepared to do all kinds of things." So pianistic skills. Technique, we talk about extensively. Um, I think of this as the ability to execute and communicate through your instrument, whatever instrument that is, in a way that's not encumbered by you know, difficulties. Um, Memorization is an important skill, especially if your focus is as a solo pianist. This is non-negotiable. Um, People who specialize in collaborative piano, this is still an important skill because of page turns. Like if I can just memorize the next two measures on the next page and can get through a page turn a little easier, that's infinitely better. Also, just really diabolical accompaniments or chamber music pieces. I'm thinking of like some of the Brahms chamber music. Um, it's it's as demanding as some of the concerto work, and you can't always have your eyes on the page. Um, Informed performance practice, of course, we see this through literature classes and performance classes. Knowledge of the repertory, and I put an asterisk by this because I think that this could see some changes in the near future. Yes, I think that we need to know the standard rep, be familiar with the Beethoven sonatas and the Bach suites. However, I think through the last year of this kind of cultural reckoning that we're having centered around issues of equity and inclusion, this is going to evolve, and I I I don't think it will change who we need to know. I don't think that people are going to suddenly decide, well, you know, Bach was cool, but we're done with him now. Um, but I do think it's going to be more inclusive, and there are going to be more people that we need to know. Time will tell. If you're really interested in this, I recommend um, music theory Twitter. There's a group of people that really get into some interesting conversations and fights, and I really disagree with a lot of what they say. But if you want to hear what are called hot takes or controversial opinions, that is the place to go. Stylistic adaptability and eclecticism, the ability to play pop and jazz and play from the American Songbook. Um, in this, I'm also including new music and living composers, which I think it's incredibly important to be working with living composers. And we'll talk more about that later. Um, Improvisation, and then there's a host of different categories within improv. Um, you play continuo and realize um, do figured bass realizations? Can you improvise jazz and do your 2-5-1s with missing roots? I don't remember who. I can't see all of your pictures right now. Somebody was talking about that.
It was me, Wanda.
Hi, Wanda. Also, tell Carol Beth True I say hello. Love her.
I will for sure.
Thanks.
Yes.
Hymn improvisation, playing from lead sheets. I'm doing an internship with the National Association of Teachers of Singing over the summer, and we're paired with singers that are then paired with a master teacher, and the master teacher called me the other day to specifically ask if I can play lead sheets because she specializes in contemporary commercial music and musical theater and pop and rock. And the last time she was a part of the program, none of the pianists could do this. Luckily, this was a part of my undergraduate education, and I could say yes. But These are important things for us all, I think, all to know. Um, and then sight reading, I can never say enough. The importance of sight reading and the ability to learn music quickly. Within pianistic skills, I think we need to address what it is to be a pianist. So my personal view, and there's probably pushback from people in the room, and I am okay with that. I'm willing to die on this hill because I really think I'm right. I think pianists should be pianists who play the piano repertory, meaning anything that's written for a piano. So the Brahms piano trios, and the Mozart concerti, and the Bach suites. Like I think we should be able to do all of it. I think our training should prepare us to do all of those different things. And I think it's part of our future. So this is a quote from Margot. This quote would have been in 2012. So it's almost a decade old, but I think it's still accurate. I think we're beginning to see this happen. She says, "I'm dreaming right now of a time, believe I'm going to see it." I think she is seeing it. When routinely pianists are pianists who have collaborative skills and solo skills. Her students are collaborative. She says that more and more of her students are working on keeping their solo playing going. I think that's going to be an important balance for everyone. So the collaborative skills come at all kinds of different levels. And these are some of the really specific skills that I think make us marketable. So playing a concerto, you need to have an incredibly advanced level of playing, obviously. The collaborative part comes with the relationship with the conductor and the musicians in the orchestra, the relationship with the audience. I think we need to consider the amount of showmanship in this relationship with the audience. There are all kinds of different opinions about that. I'm not taking a side, but I think it's a discussion about the future of classical music. And of course, there are all kinds of artists right now that you can see kind of the gamut of approaches. Chamber music, so sonatas and trios, larger ensembles, orchestral keyboard. Maybe you're playing harpsichord in a Baroque suite, or you're playing celeste in the Dance of Sugar Plum Fairies, or you're playing the piano in Firebird. It's a really different world interacting with sections in an orchestral environment. And of course, working with orchestral conductors, again, this is a different relationship than how you interact with a conductor when you're performing a concerto. Being a choral pianist, I think this is one that is relatively common. There are specific skills within this, such as reading open scores, being able to read some different clefs, possibly. I will insert two personal stories, and they're both in this slide. So I play for the St. Louis Symphony's Holiday Festival Chorus rehearsals. And I think it was the second year I was doing it. We had the first two rehearsals, and then the conductor of the concert comes to the third rehearsal. And I was talking to him ahead of time, and he said, and he was talking about this piece that we had not rehearsed. I hadn't been told I was playing, like I knew nothing about it. And turns out it was on the program. None of the singers knew, the pianist didn't, the other conductor who had been preparing the chorus didn't know. And he said, well, we don't really have a score for it, but here, I'll give you the orchestral score. Can you reduce the accompaniment? And so of course you say yes, and then you need to figure out how to do it. So I was sight reading an open orchestral score on stage at Powell with Stephen Jarvie conducting. I was terrified for my life. But it's the culmination of all of these specific skills that then gets me rehired the next year. And that leads us into orchestral reductions, playing for operas or playing for violin concertos. I think that this is personally, I think this is an underutilized skill. Yes, we need to know how to reduce orchestrations, but I think the important part is a study in tone color that is specific to all of the different instruments of the orchestra. That's then a skill that's transferable to solo playing, collaborative playing, in terms of creating different colors and broadening our palettes as pianists. And that's all I'll say about that for now. So that segued into opera, and then with opera, art song, where you're not playing a reduction, but you're playing something that's written for piano. Additional skills here include being able to at least negotiate a language, and you can't get by with less than German, French, and Italian. And as we're approaching more inclusivity in our repertoire, I think you're going to see more and more Spanish. And if you're brave, Russian. If you're not brave, find Alla to help. I know she's happy to help coach. But there's also different listening skills that come into play. And then this is a place, especially in song, not so much opera, where you might also need to do some transposition. So this is my second story, and then we're done with stories about Joe. I was playing... I'm always sight reading in these like high stress situations. I don't know what's going on. I was playing for a master class at SIUE, and the clinician was Christine Brewer, who I hope we're all familiar with. Christine is a very, very important person in the music community, especially in St. Louis. And also, like, she's the sweetest person I know. Like, I've gone Christmas caroling with her, but I'm still intimidated because of the level of artistry she brings to a room. I was sight reading a Strauss song for some singer that wasn't prepared, and it was not going well. And Chris says, "Hey, Joe, can you just like move it up a minor third?" And I was like, "Yes." And then in the moment, you just figure out how to do it, and you sight read transposing Strauss songs. Again, the culmination of a lot of different things in a really pivotal moment. Musical theater. This can range in style from Golden Age to Hamilton, and even more recent. That leads us also to playing in a band or a pit, of course, connected to opera and musical theater, or a combo. Again, your role changes and the collaborative nature of the music changes in that environment. You want to change even further, a place that a lot of us end up eventually moving into leadership positions, music direction and conducting of musical theater, maybe choruses, opera. Here we've left the keyboard at this point, but we still are using all of these skills. And honestly, everything that I've talked about, the score reading, I have not mentioned audiation, specifically transposition, reading clefs, all of this becomes part of the package of a good music director. So we've had pianistic skills, collaborative skills, professional skills. Some of this is going to be really obvious, like reliability. You need to be consistent. You can't be flaky. You can't bail on a gig for a better gig. If you've committed to do something, you need to follow through. And I know that that's not news to us, but as a college instructor, I feel like this is an important part of what I'm telling my students. Under reliability, under this umbrella, I also put creativity and problem solving here. Because part of being reliable is getting through roadblocks or problems. So if you're at a gig and the power goes out, and you were supposed to play keyboard for this outdoor concert, what do you do next? Being able to creatively think and find solution for these things in the moment is an important part of being reliable. Preparedness. You need to be able to play the music that you're performing. I know I shouldn't have to say that either, but I do. Within preparedness, I've put attitude. I don't know if I totally agree that that's where it belongs, but attitude, and your interaction with the other people you're working with is an important part of your professional skills. Attitude maybe more so belongs here in communication and how you're speaking to your colleagues, your collaborators, your audience, your stage managers. Also under communication, I think we need to make sure that our written communication is has good spelling, has good grammar, is clear and professional. Again, for students, many of them are in a habit now of sending emails that look like text messages because they have grown up just texting. And so writing, "Dear Dr. Welch, here is what I'm writing about," and then signed by their name, I get, "Hey, can I come see you at 4?" Which, if they were texting me, fine. In an email, that is not a professional way to communicate, especially if they misspell 4. Also, under communication, the timeliness of your responses. This is a place that I fail over and over, and I will be honest. All the things I'm telling you, I do my best, but I have not arrived. I am a work in progress. I like to get things returned within 24 hours. I struggle sometimes, and probably there are people on this call that can attest to that. So maybe don't tell the stories. And then the other thing here under communication is, I think in general, we need to be able to clearly articulate concepts about our art to musicians and non-musicians. Martin Katz harped on this a little bit when I was with him, because in the doctoral programs at the University of Michigan, his was the only one left that included a lecture recital. I had to do a lecture recital for my doctorate. I don't know if any of you have experienced that joy, but I think it's an important part of our training to be able to speak and to speak articulately about music and musical concepts to people that really are immersed in classical music, and just as much so to people that aren't. This next word encapsulates so much, and I assume all of you are excellent teachers and have attended many workshops and webinars about teaching, but I feel like professional skills, this is the place that belongs. And then finally, financial skills. And this is something that I would love to talk about more, but I've cut some things for time's sake. I think we need to be teaching students, young pianists, how to manage a variable income. If you make all of your money at the holidays because that's how your gigs line up, what do you do in those dry spells? How are you budgeting? I feel like that's a skill that used to be taught in high schools that has slowly disappeared in favor of STEM. Yay, STEM, I totally support, but also we've lost some of these really important just life management skills. And again, I could like spend time there about like, how do you set your price? Not talking about specific prices, but how do you gauge your market? All of those are important things that we need to understand as musicians who intend to make money doing what we're doing. Taxes. Great. Are there any questions about skills before we move on to the third big section?
Joe, I have a question.
Mhm.
Um, this is overwhelming to me. I know that you aspire to all these things, and many of them you actually are able to do. Most of us aren't have some of these skills, and the difficulty is at what point do you start working with students to help them? I think where you're going with this is you have to pick out where your strengths are and focus on that. But would you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
That is a great question. Yes, so I will agree with you and say that I think a lot of it needs to be determined here when we're doing the self analysis. And within the first couple of years um, of teaching an undergraduate pianist, I think if we are specifically looking for things in the student instead of just looking at things that we want to put on a student, then we can find places where they have natural abilities, and those natural abilities are most often where we find ourselves working anyway. Anna Epperson spoke about this when I was with her at UT Austin, and she said in an ideal world, and she was just teaching collaborative piano to graduate students. She said in an ideal world, we would be in a doctoral program for 8 years, and we'd take a different literature class every semester, and the world would be great. We'd be actually prepared for what we were doing, and that's not practical. I think and again, I'm in an academic setting. I think from a curricular standpoint, one of the lessons I learned from Anne is her teaching of these different things happens through all of the different playing opportunities her students have. So some of it is specifically in lessons, some of it is through their TA assignments, some of it is through off-campus work that she assigns them, not assigns, connects them with. Some of it is on-campus work that they get connected with, like playing for a reception and having like a gig book. So I think approaching these different things from a polycurricular way is one answer, one half of my answer. The other half of my answer is it escaped me. Oh, it is especially in an undergraduate situation to give good basic information and then advocate for lifelong learning. Like I said earlier, like I've not arrived on any of these things, and the amount of skills I have in each of these specific areas varies widely. But I know enough to exist, and I'm finding my niche, which is one of the things that my doctoral advisor said, that yeah, often we start out needing to know all of these things, but we eventually specialize. Margot says that we just don't know where our opportunities in life are going to come from. She talked about her teacher. I always say his name wrong, so I'm going to Google it before I tell this story. I don't want to say the wrong name. I think I'm right. I'm not. I'm thinking of a composer. Anyway, he this is how Margot tells the story. He loved sopranos, and so he learned the entire soprano repertoire, and he just loved being around sopranos and like had a great life doing that. And then one day Itzhak Perlman heard him play and said, "Hey, I want to hire you to be my pianist. Let's go on the road." And he didn't know any of the violin rep. And so Margot's point is that you need to have at least a good foundation in each of these areas to be prepared for whatever opportunity comes our way, because life's unpredictable. As much as we try to set ourselves on a course, I think we all have very different paths. And I don't know, I think I've ended up in a different place than I expected. I would love to hear everyone's stories. And I'll say one more thing that I feel like I'm rambling. This is getting a little tangential. But I think there's a principle that Margot teaches about playing that is applicable here. Margot teaches that if you get hired for a gig like 2 days ahead of time, you've got no time to really learn this piece of music that you've never played before. And again, we're thinking collaborative, so memorization is not so much an issue. She said the most important thing is that you do good work that is a foundation for the next time you play the piece. So do your listening, write in fingerings. And that is the right foundation for the next step, for the next time you come to it. I think that there is like an analogous professional application that I am interested in setting good foundations for then students to return to and launch from. Does that answer your question to some extent?
It does. Now I have a question. Most of us are teaching, I think many of us, I think the majority of us are teaching undergraduate students, I mean, before college.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the thing that you have noticed that those students are missing that would help them, that we could provide?
So interesting. Can I come back to, would you ask me that in the question section at the end?
Sure.
I'll let that roll around in the back of my brain. I do want to spend some time on this next section. And this is a 90-minute presentation, right? I'm not about to like run out of time. Okay, don't fire me. I think selling is what we often think of when we think of the business of being a pianist. This is the bulkiest part of this presentation and probably the wordiest, so this might be a good part of the presentation to go back to the video later, because I am going to breeze through things so we do have time for questions and for me to talk about what pianists are missing. Oh, man. Okay, I have an idea of an answer. So this was the first time I taught a branding, marketing, and networking workshop. This is GAE. I love these people. So this is my shout out to Gateway Arch East. The first component is branding. So my definition of establishing your brand is it's a visual representation of who you are and what you do. Dictionary definition is the promotion of a particular product or company by means of advertising and distinctive design. So I have a couple of logos, and this is our interactive part. I'd love to hear what you think each logo is communicating. So what do you think about McDonald's? If you knew nothing about the organization, what do you see?
I see gold.
Good.
In
Gold.
in more ways than one.
Yes.
I see a French fry.
Great. So there's some product placement in the logo.
I see things fried in grease and people putting on a lot of weight.
Mm-hmm. Probably not what McDonald's wants you to think of when you see their logo.
Sort of chipper and clown-like
Mm-hmm.
mood.
Mm-hmm. I think, yeah, they've done a good job of reducing Ronald McDonald to a very simple image. I see something that's really bold and loud and straightforward. I do not see Burger King's have it your way. Like this, to me, this is a what you see is what you get type of place. What about this one?
means my computer's rebooting.
Mm-hmm. That's our sit and wait sign. Mm-hmm. So I got a direct message. The bite out of the apple catches someone's attention. Good. I think with the just black and white, it looks very sleek and simple and classy. Yeah, Kathleen says professional. I think it communicates a level of professionalism as well. It also, in some ways, looks formal and somewhat expensive. Apple's not expensive, right?
I like the empty space. We talked about this in graduate marketing class. The empty space draws me in.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a vacuum. It wants to be filled. It inspires creativity. It's easy on the eye. And we need rest because we get so much clutter, and we need quiet, we need rest. And music without rest would just be like horrible. One long set.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting. So you've had an advanced marketing class. You should be teaching this part. Now I'm really self-conscious about what I'm going to tell you all. I think I know what I'm doing. And then this is our department logo at for music and theater at Blackburn College. I didn't design this, but I'm just like morbidly curious. What kind of impression does this leave with you?
Too much on there.
It's a lot of information. Mm-hmm.
It looks like fun.
We are fun.
But, come have a good time.
Yeah, and I think that is a fair representation of what our department's history has been. Mm-hmm.
I like the font.
Good. It's kind of playful, right?
Yes.
Great. So one of the things about Blackburn College that you might not know is that we are the only student-managed work program in the country. So there are 7, or I think just in the last couple of years there was an 8th one. There are 8 work colleges in the country, and each one is slightly different. But the premise is that the students work for the school to pay part of their tuition. And ours is the only program in the country, and to our knowledge, probably the world, where the students also become managers. So the students hire and fire each other. They set each other's schedules. They, in some ways, are my equals, and in some ways, my bosses. So each year, I apply for the number of workers that I need to run the music department. So I need a concert producer, and I need someone to run our social media, and I need a student pianist to play for some voice lessons, and I need what else? Someone just to like manage the office, because they're all students, and a group of students tells me how many of those positions I get. It's an incredibly unique experience. I'm still learning a lot about it. It's really beneficial to, I think, everyone involved. But anyway, that's a long way of saying that this was created by a student to start branding our department. Okay, told you I wasn't going to dawdle. Let's go. So branding has two components. There's the context, which is just your basic professionalism, and then the content. And this is, I think, where I can provide more information. It's how customers are perceiving you. And Karen, again, probably knows infinitely more than I do. So how you present yourself. Here we return to good spelling, good grammar. On your social media, make sure you have recent posts, that you don't have outdated information. If you have a website, make sure that your links work and go to the place that you think that they're supposed to go, that there aren't dead links or links that are wandering off to a page that has changed. But also the quality of paper that you're putting your materials on, if you have a letterhead, how you visually organize formal communication, your website, all of these things, the cohesivity of it all. Having a mobile-friendly website is more and more important. I think at this point probably more important than having a computer-friendly website. So many of us are on our phones first. And then content. These are the things that you're saying about yourself. So it's the body copy of what you're literally saying about yourself. But it's also the pictures that you choose to include, how you organize these things, the font that you choose. So I'm glad that we mentioned the font for the Department of Music and Theater, that it conveys like a playfulness and fun. A lot can be communicated through font. The formality or informality of how you present the information. I find color theory kind of fascinating. Maybe this is dull and boring to some of us on the call, but just the colors that you're using say a lot about you and how you work, and that's a whole rabbit hole, and there's lots of information on the internet that you don't need me to say to you. And then your headshot should communicate a lot about you. I'm going to show you examples of mine just to talk through things. If you have questions as we go, let me know. Consistency and branding. All of your information needs to be similar. I think part of this starts with like how we present ourselves as professionals. When you're teaching or playing, I think there needs to be some amount of consistency in our attire. You can fight me on this one, and I would like give a little of ground. But I wouldn't go to work today in this and then show up tomorrow in overalls. Like if I wanted to wear overalls like kind of regularly, yeah. But it's not part of who I am or what I'm communicating to students. BT Dubs, I do have overalls. I live on a farm, so it's definitely a part of who I am, but not my brand necessarily. Your website, advertisements, we're going to talk more of those soon. Social media, we're going to talk about flyers, pamphlets. And then I'm so glad we had this conversation earlier about Zoom backgrounds, because this tells us something about yourself now. And it has to do with professionalism also, but also can show things that are important to you, like I see pianos, I see books. All of these things communicate something about you and your brand. If you're interested in those things and you are on Twitter, there's a Twitter handle, Rate My Room or Rate My Zoom. I think there's probably a couple of them where they rate people that are appearing on new shows and their Zoom backgrounds. And they give feedback about, well, that painting is an interesting choice, but having that specific book on the shelf tells us this about you. There's a lot we can communicate, and I think it's been an important lesson in branding. I'm going to go through my brand. It needs to be updated. When I get back from the internship this summer, everything's being replaced. But here's my headshot. If you go to any of my email addresses, my email addresses, if you go to my website, if you get my business card, you're going to see this picture. And we can talk about what the photographer and I were trying to communicate about myself in this picture. I'm just going to tell you rather than solicit feedback for right now. So I did not go real formal because I try to be really approachable to everyone, really, but especially to students and in a professional way. I think that sets me apart from the formality of how most classical pianists present themselves, often in tuxes or in black and white or framed with a piano. The color choices are pretty bold. I'm very dead on, so it's a pretty straightforward picture, which I hope communicates that I'm also straightforward and generally don't pull too many punches, but am honest in a relatively friendly way. My business card, hey, you might notice that this font that I've been using on the slide and the slide backgrounds are what my my background and my professional font are. Business cards, I think, are underrated. As we move into a digital age, you might be tempted to think that we're done with them. I think you should have them on hand at all times. It's so easy to just hand, of course, maybe not during COVID. Handing people stuff has become kind of taboo. But hopefully in the future, that's less of a problem. But it's so much easier than trying to jot down an email address when you can just hand them a card. This is my website, so when you open the homepage, it's the same thing that you've seen everywhere else about me. My Twitter, here is the same headshot. I think this is an interesting banner choice. I think, again, often we see so much polish and professionalism in Pianist's brands that this says something very different. And for fun, if you're interested, I was working at a church camp in the middle of Nebraska and started learning the second Rachmaninoff concerto on this piano. So that's where the picture comes from. Dust flew, like it was an event, but I think it also connects to my little short bio here where I say I'm a pianist, coach, teacher, and country bumpkin. I am not a New York City pianist, and I'm okay with that. That's just part of who I am. There are plenty of ways to find free ways to create really high quality content. Canva is a great resource for creating visual things, creating business cards, creating posts for social media, creating posters, creating programs for recitals. And again, they have a section for your brand where it keeps all of your colors on a palette that you can use. There's a paid version, of course, but there are free resources. During the pandemic, I've learned a lot about audio engineering. Audacity is what I've been using. Again, it's free. It's pretty user-friendly. Likewise, I've done some video editing. If you're doing any online recitals, you might need to do that. If you're not a Mac person, and I'm not a Mac person, so I know that there's GarageBand and there is iMovie and lots of built-in editing. Yay! I'm so glad. I'll have to tweet about that later. But if you are a PC person, OpenShot has been really user-friendly for me, and again, free, which we love. Again, there are plenty of ways to get free open source tools and provide high-quality content.
Joe, could I ask a quick question?
Yeah, of course.
I was just curious about, I work at a church, and apparently the music director before me was using software, some type of a MIDI software that he could print scores for the band, and so he would make notations specifically for guitar, specifically for drums and that type of thing. And I mean, I've had some experience with Finale and Sibelius, but I just don't know if they have that capability, or if you know of something that would be just open soft, something that I would be able to use for free.
I don't. I that's not something I do a lot of. I'm hopeful it exists. I have a couple people in mind that I would reach out to. Let me write down your question and I will ask them and try to get back to you.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Again, I'm happy to say what I don't know.
I do know about Muse Score, Catherine, but I'm not quite sure about those specific types of notations. That's what I was kind of interested in.
Mm-hmm.
But thanks, Joe. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Let me see what I can find out. In the whole open source conversation, I also am a big fan of moving to open source textbooks. And there are more options becoming available to teach music history and music theory without buying, $250 of books. And that resonates with me because a large portion of the students that we serve at Blackburn College do not come from money, and I think it is an important component of access and equity to provide high quality materials that are free to everyone. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Marketing. I split marketing into two groups. There's the warm market and the cold market. The warm market these are the people that you know. Cold market are the people you don't know. So you know your friends, your relatives, your existing customers, maybe like 1 degree of separation through a referral. People are familiar with who you are, but even if they haven't actually interacted with you. And then the cold market, of course, is like everybody else. These are your future prospective customers that don't know you. Some tools for warm marketing. Create systems to retain students and incentives for students to stay in lessons. In your marketing, use case studies of this person studied piano and this is what they're doing later. Testimonials where people speak directly about you. I took lessons with Wanda and this is how it impacted me, or this is why it's important in my life. I'm sure many of us have referral programs. That's all part of warm marketing. Cold marketing is maybe what we think of as just like generic advertising. So this can be a newspaper, being on a TV special, which there are, of course, if you have a compelling story, it's pretty easy to get on a local news channel. Through your website, where just random people can stumble across your information. Brochures that you leave places for people that aren't meeting you. Merchandise, if you have like a stress relief ball that has your logo and web address on it, like I don't know, maybe you're throwing those out in a parade. Messaging for cold marketing, you need to identify who your target audience is so you know who you're selling to, understand what they need, clearly define how your service meets their need, and be clear about what makes you unique. It's a lot. Targeted cold marketing, a beginner's guide to stalking. I say that a little tongue-in-cheek, but if you're familiar with like really intense marketing strategies of Target or Facebook and Google, like they know everything about us. It's terrifying. But if you specialize in teaching beginning lessons for very young children, and that's what you do best, and it's most of your current studio, you are going to market that at a pediatrician's office, at preschools, where those people are, or the people that pay the money for the little people are. If you teach beginning lessons for retirees who have free time on their hands and you've found a niche of reaching this group of people that maybe didn't get to take piano lessons when they were younger, didn't have the money when they were younger, you're going to market a senior living facility or at AARP meetings, which I believe often like to have live entertainment. So maybe you take a gig playing for one of these meetings and you make a connection of somebody that says, oh, I wish I'd learned to play the piano. And you're like, here's my card. I will teach you. Targeted cold marketing. Intermediate advanced lessons for high schoolers. Social media is the buzzword. So crash course in social media. This is really quick. You'll come back to this slide. And I'm, again, happy to answer questions later. Pinterest. So this is not necessarily considered social media, but I mention it because there are some interesting teacher resources on it. It's not really a place to build a community or to advertise necessarily, but it is a place where you can get ideas. It's also a great place if you're interested in really establishing your brand. There's tons and tons of information about color theory and font choice and what these things say about you. The one we all know and love is Facebook. Facebook is so complicated. Especially probably since the last time I have presented about this, the demographic of Facebook is skewing older and older, while also just with a general falling away of people not checking it because of unkind communications, we'll call them, about politics and the pandemic. But through Facebook, you can do really targeted ads. So if you have your page on Facebook, which I still think, even if it's not a happy place, don't tell Mark Zuckerberg I said that. Even if it's not a happy place, like, it's a beneficial place, because if you have your page, then you can buy an ad that directly targets people in your community that have kids this age and are interested in the arts or whatever thing. And Facebook does all of that targeted stalking for us. And it's easy to take advantage of that way. Instagram would skew a little younger than Facebook. It's very image and photo driven. So your posts are not going to be a lot of text. It's going to be pictures or videos of things that you're doing. There are good communities here. You can start following hashtags, hashtag piano teachers, and piano teachers are posting and they include that hashtag. You see what other studios are doing. Again, that's very visual driven. Twitter is such an interesting world. So your communication is limited to 240 characters. 240? 280. I get confused. It used to be 140. This is another place where you can build communities. There's
280.
280? Okay, they did do double it. Thank you, Eileen. I'm going to follow you back as soon as I hang up from the call. I'm so excited. But this is a great place to find community. There's Music Theory Twitter. They have Q&A sessions. There's Piano Twitter. A lot of, if you're interested in working with living composers, a lot of them are on Twitter. And it's a great place to connect and find those people. Twitter is also closer to the right age group for parents of children that would be in piano lessons. Demographically, I don't know that they're the easiest to reach there, but it's kind of where those people are if you can find them. YouTube, this is like, there could be a whole week long of sessions about YouTube. Of course, you can monetize your channel, so you're making money off of the content that you're creating. I have a friend who's an opera star who's doing that right now, and that's kind of how she's surviving through the pandemic because all her gigs were canceled. She, in a really technical way, analyzes what pop stars are doing and how they're making the sounds that they create, and she makes money doing that. Playing wise, we have to we have to make sure that we're not breaking any copyright laws. Their policing of that has improved greatly. If you're playing something that's copywritten, they're really great at finding that and then in some way either blocking you from posting it or monetizing your channel for the content's creator. So not you don't make the money, but somebody's going to put an ad on your video and make money from watching it. And then the other part of YouTube that I need to mention is creating content for kids. If you're making content for kids, you have to specifically declare this for kids. That changes a lot of how the page is written. People can't comment. YouTube has taken a lot of recent steps to start protecting kids in a way that I'm glad that they are. But it's a legal issue that we need to be really careful about. Snapchat is a messenger app that's both visual and textual, where the messages disappear, mostly for just general communication to specific people. You don't really post things to attract new clients. TikTok. TikTok skews young. It's the one that I know the least about. I recently had my TikTok debut for the school. It was very exciting. But it does provide some interesting opportunities like duets. You can record the secondo part and then your your students can duet with you, and they play your video and then record them playing along, and then it creates this duet that then they can post. It's a thing. I would love to know more about it if any of you are experienced TikTokers. Oh, okay. Real social networking. This is going to be so fast. This is bad teaching. I'm saying it out loud. This is not good, but we're going fast. You need to be visible. So play places. If you're interested in teaching senior citizens, then play for retirement communities. Play for a church. Play for solo and ensemble contest. Attend ball games of your students. And then when people are like, oh, who's this person that's sitting with you? Like, who are they? Oh, they're my piano teacher. Oh, you know what? We've been thinking about piano lessons. Hey, here's my card. Like, it's constantly just being visible. What else do I have? Have a booth at a town festival. You don't even have to be selling anything. You just be there. Maybe have a keyboard. Maybe do duets. Be in a parade. Like, there's no right or wrong answer. You could do skywriting if you think that would be effective for you. Be visible. Be ready. So again, this is my business card thing. You should have them on you at all times. Make sure your social media is up to date and accurate. If you're performing, you need to be able to play well each time. We covered that back in skills. And then the third thing is be engaged. So if you're having a conversation with someone, make sure you're engaged in that conversation. If you're at a soiree and there's someone there that you want to talk to that you really think is a potential customer, and you're in a conversation with somebody else and like the one you want to talk to is walking away, don't just like abandon the person. This is like good interpersonal communication skills, right? You can't just like drop a conversation because you want to talk to somebody else. Again, that's probably more for my students. It's not something they've necessarily developed. Always ask more than you tell. Of course, you want to be able to tell who you are and what you do, but receive information from the people you're talking to and their interests and what they want. And then respond to what they say. And then finally, be interested without being pushy. If you're not the right fit, suggest another pianist or teacher. I think of the Miracle on 34th Street principle, like, if you can't get the toy at this store, I can tell you which store to go to get it, because I think that's an important part of being in the musical community, an important part of being a respectful of what someone is looking for. If you're not a jazzer and somebody wants jazz lessons, don't accept them as a student just for the money. It's better for you and for them and your colleague down the street if they go to the right teacher. Networking. I once tried to explain how important networking is and how one of my gigs connected me to the next gig, and I looked like this. It was, in retrospect, probably pretty embarrassing. But I really, really believe in the importance of building a really complex network. So obviously we need to be connected to musicians through professional groups like SLAMTA and Piano Teachers Roundtable and GAE and Guild, finding your community, collaborators, other musicians, living composers. Again, I really, really believe that this is important for building a career, always, but especially right now. And then, like, I could have a whole other conversation about the importance of having a mentor while also having a mentee, that we should be both learning and teaching at all times. If you're missing one of those people in your life, I hope you find them. For non-musicians, school teachers are an obvious important connection. Arts administrators, the people that hire pianists, stage managers, stage hands, artists in other disciplines, a chamber of commerce, like anybody in your life can be part of your network. And it's here where I'm going to say that I think a lot of this boils down to being a decent human being and being likable and treating others with respect. Um, I hear auditions frequently for stage productions of opera and musical theater, and when we start casting, the very first thing I do is I ask the stage manager which people treated the stage manager poorly out in the hall, and they get removed from the list. And then I look at how I look at which auditionees thanked the pianist in the rehearsal room, and the ones that didn't are maybe not thrown out, but certainly sidelined in favor of people that are just good human beings. I think that's important for all of us. So that's a lot of information. What it really boils down to, branding is defining you. Marketing is defining and reaching your consumers. Networking is connecting you and those consumers. Good news, we're almost to questions. So here is our Venn diagram. Again, I have a handout with the Venn diagram that's blank, so you can start filling these things in for yourself. Karen, this might start to answer your question about helping young pianists, especially if they're interested in this, in making their living as a pianist. Great, thank you. Sorry, I just saw Grace's comment. I think if they're interested in making money as a pianist, we need to use career language rather than job language, so that it's clear that it's going to be a combination of things, these streams of incomes. I think we should be really embracing innovative incomes and cultivating creative approaches to the field. I think maybe what I would be saying then, to answer Karen's question earlier, is that we need to cultivate really open minds about music and musicianship and the career specifically. And again, some of that is really at the forefront of conversations about equity and inclusion right now, diversity of composers that we're teaching, but also, being okay with them having a YouTube channel where they play their Bach. And I know of someone that I judged at a solo ensemble competition. She's a young pianist. She started a YouTube channel about her insulin pump because there wasn't enough information out there for her, and she wanted to provide the information for others who were looking for it as she learned it. And she started playing on her channel now, and she plays her Bach and her Mozart, but also she plays some pop music and sings some Ed Sheeran, and she's creating a community of people that are going to her channel for that content, and she's making money off of it, and she's a junior in high school. It's that type of mindset that I think we as a field need to embrace. Again, not saying that we just abandon Bach and Mozart, but it's this, and find your unique voice within the classical community. Also, I think fostering lifelong learning. I'm so glad that this was built into the presentation. I feel like this is continuing to answer Karen's question. And lighting fires in students where they want to learn more about things. I think we've all been great lifelong learners during COVID. We talked earlier, I think before the meeting, about having online recitals. COVID has taught us about the importance of being flexible, embracing change, and pivoting as your market evolves. We have championed technology in ways that we would never choose to, but we have done it well, and we've done it as a community. And I think that's so important. It's a little kernel of what good entrepreneurship is. It's a mindset that gets us through times of small changes, but also tectonic shifts. So what can all of this look like? If you remember the frame from earlier in the conversation, I really think that we need to provide pianists with all of these skills. I first did this hosting the business of being a pianist as a week-long workshop. This is when I was teaching at McKendree University in Lebanon. And this is a group of the first group of people that attended. Our focus was literally on the business skills, tax prep, valuing your services. Oh, I think I broke something. Okay, we're back. Finding collaborative opportunities. I was young and dumb, but I did my best because I thought that this was important and I had something to share with these young pianists. Since then, I've grown and continue to learn. And I'm happy to share I've actually written a brand new curriculum for Blackburn College. When I was hired 2 years ago, they had shut down their music major. I was hired to teach out the music major and possibly just like in the department, which was tragic. But what I've written is a new music major that's informed by all of these principles we've talked about. So Blackburn's motto, I've told you a little bit about them being a work college. Their motto is learn, work, earn. And the curriculum is written to help students do those things. They study while they're there, these foundational skills. They work at the college as a pianist to pay part of their tuition. And then they're prepared to earn an income when they graduate so that they're producing an income through playing the piano or singing. Those are what we focus on. Upon graduation from their undergraduate. So if then they want to go on to their master's, they're set up with their business to pay part of their tuition. We're not just accumulating debt, which I think is a reckoning this country is headed towards. So this brand new major integrates an entrepreneurial focus through coursework, and then students launch a business. They'll establish their LLC as part of their senior capstone. Now, this is not a music marketing degree, even though it might sound like it, because we spend equal time studying applied lessons, pedagogy, literature, theory, history. The other half of the senior capstone is a full senior recital. It's all classically based, but tailored for our current time. And it's really unlike anything in the area. The curriculum, I'm thrilled to say, was embraced unanimously by the college faculty, and we just are waiting on final approval from the Board of Trustees next month. A career like this, what does that look like? So Q read my bio earlier and said I teach at Blackburn College, which is true. And I have these 8 other jobs. So I'm just going to run through the rest of my bio. In addition to my full-time job at Blackburn, I'm the founder and artistic director of St. Louis Art Song. Until the pandemic, I was playing for the Young Men's Chorus for St. Louis Children's Choirs. I'm the director of music at First Congregational Church in Bunker Hill, where I also play the organ and direct a choir. I'm the assistant music director for Variety Theater. If you've never heard of it, please go look up about it. It's such incredible, important work being done in our city. I'm the pianist for Opera Edwardsville. I coach 2 of the Opera Theater Artists in Training Studios for high school singers. I'm a frequent sub, especially in harpsichord for the Illinois Symphony Orchestra. I've been the pianist, as I said earlier, for the St. Louis Symphony's Holiday Festival Chorus for 3 years. And I have an exciting new job starting this fall that I cannot tell you about yet, but as soon as I sign a contract, it will be on my social media. So make sure you follow me to find out what it is. So here's my contact info. Again, this is on the handout that I will email to send to everyone. But if you have any questions or follow-up, I am always happy to help as much as I can. My Facebook is Piano Welch, like my email. Also my Instagram and my Twitter, and my cell phone is there. Again, that information is on the handout. Oh my goodness, so over time. I'm getting fired. Does anybody have any other questions? I know it's so much information and it is overwhelming and it is like drinking from a fire hose, which is why I think it's important to integrate into real curriculum. So we're not figuring these things out just on our own after we walk at commencement. So I'm going to stop talking. Are there any questions?
I do have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Next door that's another, it's like an app for a neighborhood that you're living in. And I know that they have paid ads that you can do. I just was wondering if you had an experience with just throwing something out there on Nextdoor and, you know,
I do. I do. I've had a lot of students find me on Nextdoor. Somehow it was rather difficult, but somehow I created a free business page, and you list it under piano, and people find you.
didn't know you could do a free page. That's good. That's helpful.
Yeah, and they keep bugging you and wanting you to pay,
Yeah.
but I have never paid, and I have gotten a lot of new students through that.
Well, good to know. Thanks, Karen.
And that's great because I have no experience. I live out on a farm away from anyone, and so Nextdoor has not found us out here. BOBAP, business of being a pianist. Okay, if there are no other questions, I can't get to
Oh,
this.
one more,
Yeah,
one
go
more.
ahead, Karen.
I tried to do a brand using Canva, and I had worked with a coach. I have a business and mindset coach that I work with, and she just raves about Canva and how to do it. But I need help. It's not that easy. Everybody talks about, oh, it's so easy, it's so easy. But so I'm just sticking with the brand that I created, which is just basically a picture of my music studio, which is kind of boring. But is there a guide for like Canva for dummies?
I think there is a anything for dummies on YouTube. That's YouTube has, you know, instructional videos for how to, I don't know, do maintenance on the inside of toilets. That's where I went to learn about how to use Audacity and how to remove background noise from the audio that students were sending me. It would be my first recommendation. I would also think that Canva would produce something themselves that's kind of user friendly. In terms of instructional, not just, I know they bill themselves as user friendly, but I would think that there's something on their website.
Doesn't want to do it.
I would have to look. I don't know off the top of my head. I learned from students, you know, people that were already using it, and so they showed me some stuff, and then I just tinkered enough until I found my way around it. Yeah, so maybe also just finding a colleague that has some background. If you want to hang out and look at Canva with me sometime, we can Zoom and I'll share my screen and we can do that too.
Oh, that'd be great. Okay, cool.
Great.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome to. I'm sorry I ran a little long. I hope it's okay.
Glad that we recorded it because then now we can watch later again.
Good.
It was
And, of
great.
course,
I learned a lot.
Good. And if any questions come up as you're maybe thinking about these things or processing everything that was just dumped on you, I'm happy to answer anything through follow-up questions anytime. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Bill?
Thank you so much. And, you know, again, it would have been great that we have a luncheon together after this wonderful session. Then we can talk about more details and then we can continue, you know, but unfortunately we cannot do that. So I think, you know, if you have any questions, he, you know, shared his emails and his contacts. So please, you know, contact him. And I think it's very important that we all have to know, and as a teacher, we should kind of prepare our students to, you know, fit and, you know, be good later for their career. So I think it's, very good session. Thank you so much, Joe.
Thank you, Q.
On
Thanks for
behalf,
having me.
Good.
on behalf of PTRT, I know there are a lot of us on here, and I know we all appreciated it too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen.
All right. So again, next year, I'm thinking that